of Write This Way with me. I thought in this episode I'd talk about developing characters. Now, authors, I've discovered, fall into two groups. There's those of us who tend to go by character, and there's those of us who follow plot first and then the characters emerge. And I think I'm really more likely to be, when I look back through the books I've done, the kind who does character first. So the first thing I wanted to say about character is that it's a good idea to remember that the characters aren't you. If you think about always putting yourself in your books, you're going to get just one kind of person. I mean, it doesn't stop you doing something that's a bit more autobiographical at some point, but you do have to move away from that. And there's another reason for thinking about the characters actually not being you, and that is you might find that you get limited. So, and others might limit you as well as to what your characters can do. They'd stop being true to themselves. Now, I have a particular example about this that I wanted to share with you. And that is when I moved from writing for young people to writing for adults, I wrote this book, I'll put it on that side, called Don't Trust Me. And in Don't Trust Me, my main character, Jess Bridges, she suffers from an adult form of ADHD. And this leads her to some very risky behaviour, such as sexual relationships that are not ideal, and some behaviour which you would not want to recommend to your best friend. So there is a danger, if I thought I was her, that I would sort of feel that people would read it and I'd get embarrassed. And in fact, because I'd come from writing about children and young people, I did have a few people say to me, "Oh, I didn't know you could write about that," as if, I didn't know about the birds and the bees. Come on, guys, I've got 3 kids. But anyway, so that's quite funny. So you need to separate yourself from your characters. And what you need to be going for is what Keats, the famous poet, called negative capability. It's a posh phrase, but what it means is you need to leave behind yourself and imagine what it's like to be. He used the example of a bird hopping across a lawn, or a billiard ball rolling across a table, which I think is quite a lovely image. So you need to develop the ability to separate yourself from your characters. So that's number 1. So once you've done that, what then happens? Well, you get your idea for your character, and then after that it's a question of letting your character drive the plot, or allow the plot to develop around the character. I have in mind a particular lesson I learnt when writing my Cat Royal series, in particular in the second book in that series. Cat Royal is a young girl who lives in a theatre in 1790, and in this book, if I hold it up, that's the American edition of this particular series, number 2. I had this lovely plan for how Cat would behave. She was going to be in a room delivering tickets to a slave owner who used to own her best friend. And I had worked out in my head a little scene about how they might have an argument. But what actually happened was, Cat is quite an explosive character. She's got a big temper. So she misbehaved and wrecked the place, or had a bit of stormed through it, did some damage, did some vandalism in her temper to escape. And it meant that the plot then took off in a completely new direction. It was great fun. I felt as though I was running after her. And this reminds me of one of my favourite quotes. The famous American writer William Faulkner writes this, that when he writes, it begins with a character usually, and once he stands up on his feet and begins to move, all I can do is trot along behind him with a paper and pencil, trying to keep up. So yes, it does sometimes feel like you're just trying to keep up with your characters. And then when you let them do that, I think it's much more exciting writing experience. It feels as though the chemistry of the book has really taken hold and is going in interesting directions. So a way of sort of summarizing that experience is put very well by Ray Bradbury, who you might have read some of his novels. He says for him, when he looks at his books, plot is no more than footprints left in the snow after your characters have run by on their way to incredible destinations. So he has the sense that the plot is created by the character's passage. So it's quite an exciting idea that your novel could be something you're not quite in control of once you've thought about your characters and got them running. Okay, so I promised to always give you some homework. And so I'm going to give you some homework in this session now. And we're going to sort of do a little exercise together. How do you come up with a character that isn't same old, same old? Well, one place to look is to find some visual references, a photograph. I've chosen some portraits from this book that would encourage you to think up a character who's not your usual one. And one of my favourite portraits in this book is this man. I'll hold that up so you can see it. He's called the Tailor. Let me get that at the right angle. There we go. Other side. There we go. That's better. So let's imagine we're making something up for this character. How do you go about it? Well, there are a number of things I do for this, but one good way is to ask yourself questions about the character. And I've got some here which I use in school creative writing sessions. So for those of you home from school, if I was in your school today, this is what we might be doing. So looking at this man, I need to get him right for my camera again. There we go. Nah. There we go. I have to move left the opposite way to how I'm holding it. Anyway, so the first thing, looking at this guy, I would say is, who does he live with? The portrait is called The Tailor, and he's clearly from a kind of Tudor period, so we're talking historical. Or maybe he's in a fantasy book. I mean, that's another option, isn't it? So who does he live with? He's quite young, so he might not yet be married. I think he lives, this is my answer, you'll have your own. I think he lives with his older brother, who's a bit of a troublemaker. He looks like he could be a troublemaker too, to be honest. And then the next question I'd ask is, what's his favourite outfit? What does he like wearing? Well, he's a tailor, so I bet he has very precise tastes in what he likes. So maybe his favourite outfit is one he's made for somebody else. And if I was going to research this further, I might go and look at a few portraits of Tudor gentlemen and come up with something specific. So maybe he's envious of the people he's making the clothes for. You see, he's got a great big pair of scissors that look quite ominous to me. Another question I might ask to get to know this guy is, what is in his pocket? So it could be something where you're sort of thinking about the world around him. So it might be a needle and thread, that kind of thing, or the key for his house. Or you might sort of progress your story by deciding there's something like a letter, and then you'd have to work out what's in the letter. The next question is, what's the last thing he lost? Now, you could answer this in all sorts of ways. It could be his cat, his master, his job, or his marbles. That's an English idiom for his mind. And then number 5 in my questions is, what is his goal in life? So what is his goal? What does he want to achieve? And that's motive. And stories need motive. So if you answer those 5 questions, you begin to get a character portrait, and it will give you your story. So I'm suggesting that for your homework, you go away and you ask yourself those 5 questions about a picture you find that you think would make an interesting character. So just to recap, the first question is, who does your character live with? The second is, what's his or her favourite outfit? The third question is, what do they have in their pocket? The fourth question is, what was the last thing they lost? And number 5 is what's their goal in life? And I think you'll find that those answers will give you your story. So that's the end of a very basic introduction to character. We'll probably do more on character, but I promised only 10 minutes of creative writing. So now your job is to go away and actually write. So I hope that you're not finding things too difficult and then you're having a creative time whilst maybe stuck at home. Bye, guys.